Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
The Governor's Council will come to order, and I recognize Councilor Devaney for a prayer and to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Governor. Dear Lord, we pray for your guidance in all our deliberations. Let our actions always be pleasing to you. Amen.
Amen. Where is our flag?
I pledge allegiance to the
flag
of
the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Councilors, special thanks for accommodating the change in time. And at the last minute, I think you all know the reasons why, and I do appreciate it. Councilor Ianella, do you have for us a motion to record advice and consent for the financial warrant?
Yes, I make a motion to approve the financial warrant.
Thank you, Councilor. Is second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. I recognize Councilor Duff for a motion to record advice and consent for the pending. Would you mind closing that? Thank you. For the pending list of notaries public and justices of the peace. Thank you, Councilor. We have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. I recognize Councilor Albano for a motion to record advice and consent for the appointment of Thomas H. Estes to the position of Associate Justice of the Northampton District Court.
On behalf of the people of Western Massachusetts, Governor, and particularly Hampshire County and citizens of Northampton, I'm very pleased to make that motion. And before there is a second, I'd like to just add two words to that. Perfect fit. Thomas Estes is a perfect fit for the Northampton District Court. He's going to serve the people of that county very well.
Thank you, Councilor. Is there a second?
I second that and concur with my counselor from Long Meadow.
Thank you, Councilor.
Very good.
We'll look at it together.
Any discussion?
No.
Okay, should we call the roll, George?
Councilor Cipollini.
Yes.
Councilor Jubinville.
Yes.
Councilor Devaney.
Yes.
Councilor Ianella.
Yes.
Councilor Duff.
Yes.
Councilor Kennedy.
Yes.
Councilor Caissie.
Yes.
Councilor Albano.
Yes.
Unanimous.
Thank you. Doesn't it feel
It
good?
does feel good, yeah.
I recognize Councilor Devaney for a motion to record advice and consent for the appointment of Joseph S. Berman to the position of Associate Justice of the Superior Court.
Governor, I make the motion for Joseph Berman as Associate Justice of the Superior Court.
Thank you, Councilor. We have a second. Discussion. Shall we call the roll?
Councilor Jubinville.
No.
Councilor Devaney.
No.
Councilor Ianella.
Yes.
Councilor Duff.
Yes.
Councilor Kennedy.
Yes.
Councilor Caissie.
No.
Councilor Albano.
Yes.
Councilor Cipollini.
No.
So we have a tie, right?
4-4.
All right. Yesterday, I nominated Tina M. You know what? Before we go on, I have a statement I want to make for the record on this appointment. I respect the vote, and I realize it's unusual for me to do so. As you know, I nominate candidates for judgeships, and once I do, my practice has been to defer to the council and its confirmation process. By this point, each candidate has been screened by the Judicial Nominating Commission, the Joint Bar Committee, the State Police, and my staff, and interviewed personally by me. So I have not felt it necessary in most cases to engage directly in council proceedings. On the whole, that practice has served us well. With very rare exceptions, the council has confirmed my nominees. By all accounts, those appointees have served with distinction. I appreciate our working relationship. I really do, and I respect the role of the council. However, in light of today's vote, and I think we all knew coming in what it was going to be, I feel compelled to address for the record some of the concerns expressed about the nomination of Joseph Berman to the Superior Court. I have no personal relationship with Mr. Berman. Through the 12-month-long screening process, I've come to know his strong record as a lawyer, counselor, and citizen. It is no surprise that he has been named by his peers as one of the top 100 lawyers in New England. He has extensive civil and criminal litigation experience in the Massachusetts trial courts, and though his criminal experience has largely involved cases in Boston Municipal Court and appeals from the Superior Court, it is no less and is in many cases greater than that of other excellent Superior Court judges whom this council has voted to confirm. Moreover, since his first hearing in November, Mr. Berman has taken steps to build upon the solid foundation he had in criminal law by attending continuing legal education courses in criminal law and observing Superior Court criminal sessions. It should be noted that he took some of those actions at the express and, I believe, wise direction of members of this council. Some of you have questioned his pro bono advocacy on behalf of a detainee at Guantanamo Bay. Of course, respect for the rule of law is or ought to be central to the council's consideration of a judicial candidate, and the law includes, as we here all know, the right of access to competent counsel, even for the outcast. The Supreme Court has repeatedly affirmed this principle. The Commonwealth's own John Adams, in the famous case of the Boston Massacre, is a shining example of that principle in action. With due respect to all of you, a counsel charged with the duty to uphold the Constitution should not disqualify a candidate because one of his clients was unpopular. And I would note that in the case in question, Mr. Berman's client was never charged with a crime and was released. You've questioned Mr. Berman's and his spouse's political contributions over the last decade and whether that bears on his appointment. Political contributions have never had any bearing on my nominations, and I have never given you a basis to think otherwise. Readiness is readiness. It doesn't turn into something else because the nominee exercised his or her First Amendment right to be an engaged citizen. I have consistently sent you strong nominees, each of whom, just like Mr. Berman, was independently evaluated before being recommended to me, without regard to whether they contributed to Democrats, to Republicans, or to no one at all. The Council has supported those nominees precisely because you see the same quality and readiness in them that I do. As context, I would add, as you heard last week, Mr. Berman's charitable contributions averaged 3 times the amount of his political contributions. You've questioned Mr. Berman's understanding of substance abuse issues. Mr. Berman, in fact, has a deep understanding of how substance abuse intersects with the criminal justice system through his work as a bar advocate. And in representing attorneys before the Board of Bar Overseers, he has had firsthand experience with the impact addiction can have on a person's life, family, and career. In the last few months, again, on the advice of council members, Mr. Berman has built on that foundation by reading recommended literature on addiction, observing drug court sessions, and learning from experts in this field, precisely the kind of thorough and meticulous study that we should expect of a Superior Court judge faced with a wide variety of complex and sometimes even unfamiliar issues that come before the court. Some of you have concerns about Mr. Berman's membership on the New England Regional Board and the National Commission of the Anti-Defamation League. This objection, I believe, is also misplaced. First, the Armenian genocide is a matter of historical fact. Mr. Berman acknowledges that fact now and in the past. That needs to be clear to everyone on the council as well as in the Armenian and larger community. Second, the New England Regional ADL also acknowledges the Armenian genocide, taking a different position than the National ADL. Third, while the National ADL had a different position, Mr. Berman was one of the leaders of the Regional Board's effort to change that. They succeeded in moderating the position of the National ADL. The Armenian genocide must never be forgotten nor denied. But the Regional ADL has done too much good work for human rights in our community and beyond to cast every supporter aside. We can be rigorous about evaluating prospective judges without attributing to them personally every view of a group to which they belong. Joseph Berman is well qualified in learning, experience, and temperament to serve on the Superior Court. Even so, that does not require you to confirm his appointment, of course, and your decision stands. Only reason requires you to confirm his appointment. What is done is done, but because the reasons expressed previously for your opposition are, in my view, unprecedented and I think unfair, I want to express for the record my disappointment with today's vote. No disrespect to any member, please.
Donna?
Counselor.
I'm not going to debate anything you've said because, and this is not the reason that I voted against Mr. Berman, but I think it's very important for the record that you may not be aware that the ADL, New England ADL, said, the head of ADL, in 2012, that we will not support a congressional resolution recognizing the Armenian genocide. That was a public statement by the New England ADL, and they have never recognized the genocide as it is. And that's not the issue. I have a big issue why I voted no. And I just want to correct that for the record, because to give that misinformation is not correct. So I want that to be said. Thank you.
Thank you.
Governor, just very briefly, if I may. With respect to my vote against Mr. Berman, I've said it publicly a number of times. There are a number of reasons I voted against him. Having sat through over 7 hours of hearings, I have serious reservations about his truthfulness to this council on the matters of his political contributions and whether he asked anybody to make phone calls to members of this council. At his second hearing, he tried to explain it away in some context that was just simply not true. I went back and listened to the tape. His truthfulness as to the extent of his representation of the person at Guantanamo Bay. He made it sound like this was the proudest moment in his legal career, yet it was fleshed out that he never even met with this person. He never argued a motion for him in court. In my opinion, it was simply done to pad his resume based on his testimony. With respect to the ADL, that is relevant to his truthfulness in my mind as well. His words were he led an insurrection, that he could produce no document to show he had ever written a letter, a memo, a pleading, filed anything in support of his position to lead an insurrection to change the ADL's position on the Armenian genocide. I found that to be misleading and, again, raised questions about his truthfulness. He has no criminal law experience to speak of, and while this council has confirmed nominees in the past without criminal law experience to the civil court, to the superior court, I certainly would not make a practice of doing so. It has been the exception for me, not the rule. And lastly, Governor, and really most importantly for me in casting this vote, is that I will not be part of the reality or the perception, and I respect you, Governor, in the words that you've spoken today, but I will not be part of the reality or the perception that judgeships are for sale in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, period.
Governor, if I may, I wasn't going to say, I voted against Mr. Berman for one simple reason. He lied. Nothing else counts. He lied. He lied in the first hearing, and in the second hearing, he lied about the lie. And I cannot dismiss the contributions that he gave. That is, governor's councils went to prison 30 years for selling judgeships. I don't want to condone someone who was trying to buy his way in. And in addition to all his contributions, he gave $17,000 to the Democratic State Committee. Anyone that's political knows what that means. And so, I'm not going to go into his why I feel like he's not qualified for this position, but honesty is the thing. And I have been getting hate mail. And at his hearing, in his first hearing, he said, most people when they come before us, they talk about their legal skills. He talked about his political organizational skills, how he's worked in candidates' office, running the office, organizing fundraisers, organizing workers, and strategizing with people. I don't know what that means, but he said strategizing with people. I think we want solid legal experience, not political experience. And I have seen how organized this has been. And in 15 years, I've never had such hate mail and letters to the editor, in addition to the mail that I'm getting, that they're going to get me in September if I don't vote yes. And the letters to the editor is telling people to tell their representative, Devaney, to vote for him or we'll defeat you in September. But it's not always popular to do the right thing. No matter what the political consequences, I will do the right thing. And I find no joy in voting no, but this man does not deserve a judgeship. He lied. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor?
Real briefly, it's really troubling to me where two councilors mentioned political contributions. There's a lot of wealthy people. Wealthy people should be able to contribute. Do we forget the last presidential election? Obama, over $1 billion. Wealthy people contributed to him. Romney, over $1 billion. I live in Boston, the mayor's race, millions and millions of dollars spent. The fact that he gave $100,000, he's a really, really wealthy man. That should not bar him from being on the Superior Court. And I hope all types of people apply for judgeships. Poor people, rich people, everyone should be able to apply. And just because he contributed a lot of money, that should not be a reason why we should vote against, or we should have voted against, Mr. Berman.
Thank you. Sure.
With respect to political contributions, I want to be clear that I don't believe for one instant that Joe Berman in any way, shape, or form attempted to buy a judgeship. That's not what that was about, and I don't think that had anything to do with this hearing. I think that suggestion is offensive. I've had an opportunity to speak to Mr. Berman multiple times over the last several months about his history, about his background. There is no question. Every single person in this room would say that based on his legal background, he is qualified to be on the Superior Court. There's no question about that. What I don't want to leave standing here is the attack on his integrity. I have found him to be a person of the utmost integrity, extremely honest and extremely upright. And to attack him personally, I respect other reasons that people are voting against him, but to attack his integrity, I think, is inappropriate. He's a very honest person. I had to weigh his credibility like everybody else. I talked to him about those issues. There's no question in my mind that he answered every question when he sat in that chair, honestly. Thank you.
Counsel.
Well, I wasn't going to really read this, but I got to go with Terry Kennedy. As a former client of Joseph Berman, this is from a client. I would like to convey my strong opposition to his appointment to a Massachusetts judgeship. Joseph Berman represented me in a bar discipline case and failed to respond to my interrogatories, including the testimony of an expert witness. Attorney Berman made other significant errors in my case, failed to deliver a brief to a bar counsel prior to my hearing, visibility angering the single justice, and generally exhibited a lack of experience and knowledge of bar discipline matters. I subsequently learned that despite the advertisement in Lawyers Weekly as a specialist in bar discipline cases, he had only handled one other matter. I subsequently fired Mr. Berman based on his repeated failures and attention to the case. Based on my personal experience and recent news accounts regarding and lack of experience, political contributions, failures of previous nominations, his use of his former partner's wife to solicit council members, I strongly urge you to vote against Mr. Berman. Now, this is just one. I got at least, when I left my house this morning, I cleared my voicemail on Sunday. I got 64 messages, almost all of them were against Mr. Berman. Mr. Berman, is he qualified? He knows the law. He'll study. He would make it. Does he have the temperament? That's a question I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Counsel. Counsel Irving?
Governor, I think this is a sad day for the council, and I say it because the comments you made, I think, are right on relative to the issues that were raised during the two hearings. It's clear to me that if Attorney Berman wasn't a member of the ADL, if he wasn't active in politics, and he didn't have a friendship with a Congresswoman, Catherine Clark, he'd be confirmed today. And what I don't understand and what I find particularly offensive is this perception somehow that he's buying a judgeship. I've worked with and for 7 governors. I haven't found anybody more honorable than Governor Patrick. And I find it offensive that this perception is out there. It's offensive to the Judicial Nominating Commission. It's offensive to the people who work, the Chief Legal Counsel. It's offensive to the governor. It's offensive to the members of this council that voted in favor of Attorney Berman, that somehow we're all complicit in this. And if you look at Attorney Berman's contributions, most of them were to the federal level. They're federal candidates. So if he's going to buy a judgeship, he probably should apply for a federal judgeship, or maybe an ambassador to Israel. But I just find it offensive that this whole conversation comes up because somebody wants to be active in politics. And, you know, I'm not a real smart guy. I didn't go to Harvard. I went to a little college in Western Massachusetts called Springfield College. They just talk about common sense and teach you decency. Well, Berman, in my view, would have been an outstanding justice. He's well qualified. In fact, he's as qualified as anybody who's come up in recent times. And if he didn't have these issues, he would have been confirmed, in my view, perhaps unanimously. So, you know, we can debate all of this. It's just unfortunate that he's caught up in this. You know, in the ADL, we can all agree perhaps they didn't handle the genocide, Armenian genocide, in the proper way. But look at all the good work they do. You know, the ADL was down in Arizona the other day when Governor Brewer was debating whether to sign an anti-gay measure for businesses, not allowing people from the LGBT community to go into establishments. The ADL was front and center on that. When we had the racist incident in Lunenburg, the ADL was out front on that issue, condemning it. So I don't disqualify people because they're affiliated with organizations that fight bias and prejudice. It's amazing to me that we're talking about Berman's affiliation with an organization that does good things, that does very good things for this country, for this state. Clearly he was qualified. To serve in the Superior Court. I'm disappointed, I really am. I'm disappointed about the nature of the debate, about the personal attacks that have occurred, and the fact that he's not going to be sitting in the Superior Court. I think we can do better. I think we should have done better.
I just want to say briefly, with all due respect to the council, and I know I'm a newer council member here, there's been a couple of themes that have happened this year that I find really disturbing, and one is, for some reason, being financially successful is a detriment today. And the other thing is, having gone to a really good university or law school is often held against people. And we've seen this with others, the little jabs and remarks about their education. I don't know what kind of commonwealth we are, or what kind of country we are, if we don't hold people's successes up. And I agree with my colleagues. It's a sad day for the council that we're not really picking who are clearly the best and sharpest minds to sit on the bench.
Thank you, Councilor. All right, we have two nominees before you. Tina Hurley, a nominee for the Parole Board, and this morning I nominated James Rose for reappointment to the Appellate Tax Board. Councilor Ianella and Councilor Kennedy, you are their host councilors. I will defer to you for scheduling, but I just wanted to mention this so that you are sensitive and mindful of the 30-day statutory rule, okay? All right, great. And with that, then, the formal assembly of the Governor's Council.
If I could,
I'm sorry.
we do have a date for Tina Hurley.
Do you want to put it on the record?
Yes.
Okay.
March 19th at 11 a.m. And I believe Councilor Kennedy also has.
Judge Rose, March 19th at 12 p.m.
Okay. Everybody got that? Did you get the other one,
No.
Marilyn?
March 19th at 12:30.
That's cutting it close.
I think they're both going to be pretty quick.
Okay, everybody. The formal assembly of the Governor's Council is now concluded. I will see you. We will see each other. Next formal assembly will be Wednesday, March 12th, which is next Wednesday.